go there.
Okay. Yeah, you'll have to teach me about this. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, it's so cool. Okay, I believe we're live. Hi, everybody. So sorry for the delay. We had a little we had some technical issues. I had some technical issues. That's the great thing about technology and the challenging thing about it. You never know what's gonna happen. And you may see one of our chats right on here. Maybe I can delete that. That's okay. Okay, everybody. So welcome. We're going to be talking about inner peaceful living, and some of you are listening to our podcast about this. I just did an interview with Dr. Carol Francis. This is Dr. Carol Francis. Hi, everybody. Hi, Carol. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for asking.
So we had a chat on Blog Talk Radio, but then it's also fun to do a live stream, and Carol put together a PowerPoint too, which is pretty cool. So Carol, you can I'm going to introduce you first, and then do you want to just start going through the PowerPoint, or do you want me to ask you some of our questions first, and then you can let me know what works best for you?
Oh, let's just power through the PowerPoint. Why not?
Okay.
And then we'll just dialogue. We'll just answer questions and talk to each other and find out truths to live by between the two of us.
Okay, so first I want to introduce Carol. So let me pull up all right. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. So obviously Dr. Carol Francis is here, and she has for 46 years helped people rise above depression, anxiety, fear, trauma, abuse, self-deprecation, relationship quandaries, and parenting issues as a clinical psychologist and a marriage, family, child therapist, and medical hypnotherapist. So she's also the author of 23 books as well. And she has a passion for elevating all people to live enriched, meaningful, and more vigorously. She practices in Los Angeles, South Bay area as well, where she also continues to author books for children, adults, and couples, as well as paints, and also teaches painting as a means of self-discovery and self-mastery. So these are some of Carol's websites: abusetraumarecovery.com, healthworkersupport.com, therapycounselingcoaching.com, and drcarolfrancis.com. So, and Carol, you were sharing on our podcast that on your website, people can find hundreds of helpful courses and classes, videos, audios, and written exercises for everyone to use for free. And that's amazing. And you also, of course, are the author of 23 books, which is astounding. And you can find most of Carol's books, Dr. Carol Francis' books, on Amazon.com. And also, since 2007, Dr. Carol Francis has done a podcast. Has it always been on Blog Talk Radio, or did you move it to Blog Talk Radio?
It's on all the pod streaming things. It's advertised on all of those. And it's always been through Blog Talk Radio, but it's just all over. Any pod streaming tool has it on there. So it's been around since 2007, before podcasts were even popular.
Right, you're an early adopter, yes. And you were the first person to ask me to be on your show too after I got on there. And
cool.
That was so nice of you. Your podcast is called Make Life Happen Podcast. So, and you have interviews with healers and doctors, professionals, authors, all of whom aim to optimize people's lives. So now we're going to be talking about inner peaceful living today. So Dr. Carol Francis put together a PowerPoint for us. So Carol, do you want me just to, I would give you control of the screen, but I'm not 100% sure how to do that.
I think I have it.
Oh my gosh, you have it. Perfect.
I do have it. I'm going to fly around here on this. This is the book that has about 300 pages, about 300 tools It has so many different ways of approaching and understanding inner peace and what you can do to create it. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is in this book. Now, I did write this book a lot of years ago, and so a lot has changed since then. And I wanted to clue you into a fascinating bit of research that I just read this week.
Okay.
And it gives us really a lot to ponder on. And that is how contagious stress is. Let me detail this. We all know, I don't want to vibe with this person. I'm around that person. I feel like I get all tense because they're so tense. Or yes, but cortisol is a hormone that's related to stress and tension. And we need cortisol, but when it's in our system and we begin to sweat it out through our pores, which we do with all of our hormones, it is actually contagious, literally contagious, just like the COVID. So if you were sitting next to me, Edie, I know if you were sitting next to me and I was sweating out this cortisol, you would begin to sweat out the cortisol.
Wow, that one actually makes a lot of sense. That you can kind of get stressed. You can pick up someone else's negative energy, but you can literally kind of pick up their stress too. And wow, they're always coming out with new research.
Yeah, you can always elaborate on this, and I think that a lot of times you say, "Oh my gosh, she's just contagious. She's infectious. Her joy is infectious. Her happiness is infectious. Her enthusiasm is infectious." Very possibly it's not just cortisol that sweats through our pores, but oxytocin, the hormone of love, or dopamine, the hormone of not being depressed, or serotonin, the hormone of peacefulness. I mean, I'm generalizing this here, but it's like we really begin to think about how we, how am I picking up your vibe and how is it going into my body? Well, it's the same with kind of peaceful. So you think of inner peacefulness is as a state of mind that just happens to you. I call it serendipitous inner peace, or an experience of inner peace that you actually create easily. I call those the Zen zones. And ones that you create more profoundly move us into an entirely different set of inner peace. So I'm going to move on to this slide, which is out of sequence. These are like 3 depths of inner peace. And so the first one's just that serendipitous, didn't know it was going to happen, spontaneous moments. The second one is where you are in charge of creating your inner peace. And the third one is very profound. And I know that on our podcast, I mentioned I was going to talk about the 4 layers of the cave.
That's right. Yes.
But I'm going to say there's actually 5. The fifth one is you're on the outside of the cave and you've walked toward the cave and you've had all these opportunities to see beautiful things, flowers, trees, birds, fresh air, blue sky, wonderful soil, and you're walking along. All those are serendipitous. They're happening to you type peaceful things. All you have to do is be open to receive them, discover them, and experience them. So curiosity helps, but knowing that there are all these serendipitous moments that are actually there for you, regardless of your circumstances. So we were also talking about Viktor Frankl and the idea that in Auschwitz camps, people around him were dying out of starvation, out of disease, and out of being gassed to death. He said, you can kidnap my body, but you cannot kidnap my mind. And that idea that the inner peace was going to be something he was going to own. And that's when you begin to move away from those things outside you to help you create inner peace to the inside. But at the same time, he also would experience moments of serendipitous peacefulness, where he would experience a moment of kindness between the horrible Nazi soldiers and a prisoner, just a little moment of kindness. And he would try to soak that in. It wouldn't be anything he would be in control of other than to see it, receive it, absorb it. And that's those magic moments. And you have to be available. And if you're all lost in the horribleness of your mind and what's going on, you will not see them. So inner peace can start with that sense of, let's just hook into what's around me that might
Yeah.
actually help me tap into something that's peaceful. Oh, gee, there's a flower out there. Oh, that's kind of pretty. Oh, a moment, just a moment. And you received it. And so you move past that, and that's the outer part of the cave. You move past that and you go to the inner part of the cave. The inner part of the cave is where you've deliberately said, I'm going to the cave of inner peace. And I'm going to sit down, and maybe I'm going to do meditation, or maybe I'm going to do something creative, or maybe I'm going to do something, I'm going to get some sleep, or maybe I'm going to do some exercise, or whatever. But in that first layer of the inner cave, of that cave that's yours, you can actually begin to do those things that you know are the opposite of stress and tension to you that help. I gave you an example. Some people love to cook. I hate to cook. Some people love to cook. They love to cook. It's so peaceful to them. It's such a harmonious, creative process.
Yeah.
That, you know, other people, some people like to clean their house. That's not my thing either. I'm not domestic. So, you know, but other people, to clean, and it's just so harmonious to them. I like to write books. Some people
apparently, yes, I can see
some
that.
people writing is a nightmare, you know. So don't write a book if it's a nightmarish experience for you. For me, it's just such a beautiful experience. So everybody has their ways in which they can create a beautiful experience. For you, you mentioned on the podcast that there's something that's joyful. I bet there's something that you actually do that when you do it, you just have a moment of joy. Can you tap into that for a moment, what that would be?
Yes. Well, so I was saying that I was realizing that when you were talking about peace and serendipity and finding those peaceful moments, that was reminding me of when you allow yourself to find joy in the moment, even if you're suffering in some way, it's really, and mindfulness too, right? So how peace and joy and mindfulness can kind of all work together. And so what helps me, or even being grateful, like for those small things that are going right. I didn't realize to tie that to giving me more peace of mind. But what I've been trying to do lately, and I also didn't realize that gratitude is connected to Buddhism. I didn't know that. Sort of like once you sort of, accept that there is suffering, and then you have compassion for that suffering, and then that allows you to be grateful for what's going right in your life. But how cultivating peace, I think, is a goal I think it's a hope, at least, if not a goal for everybody, that, creating peace of mind. And I'm realizing, talking to you, that is a deeper, I don't even know what the word would be, reward for being more grateful and mindful, and finding things that give me joy, or things that make me feel more present. So for me, it's usually first tied to gratitude, or appreciation, right? Like, but it's the same idea. It's like, it's being appreciative of a flower that I see, or a good, like this is a moment to be grateful for, right? We're connecting, we're helping other people. And then how that can give you a sense of peace of mind too, because you were talking about how meaning is important to you and being creative. I didn't know that those were ways that you could also foster peacefulness and peace of mind. But I think, just Carol, for me, just making that connection between joyful moments, serendipitous moments, and how that can lead to greater peace is an aha moment for me. But I'm trying to look for more moments where I feel grateful for my life, and not how you want it to go, even though of course you can co-create and manifest. And I'm learning more about that and how powerful that is. But you want to be okay with your life as it is too, right? Because there's so much goodness there. And I can see how that would give you more peace of mind. So anyway, so that's what I've been working on. It's just being more great. Gratitude is kind of thrown around a lot right now, but it has really deep roots, actually. So anyway, it's all kind of tied together. But anyway, and I really love your PowerPoint, by the way. I'm really glad you did this, and I'm so glad that we were able to. Isn't StreamYard amazing? You can kind of.
That's right. So even right now, in that sense of gratefulness for the streaming, gratefulness for connection, gratefulness for am I being able to pull this together? So forth and so on. So it's like that gratefulness is, it's very deeply rooted in every single major religion, and
Okay.
you'll find a gratefulness practice in every single religion,
Interesting.
and faith-based or spiritual oriented, and also in mindset. So a mindset that some people have when they are faith-based is everything happens together for good. God's in charge of everything. God must want me to learn something from this. Those mindsets that come from a faith-based approach to life keep you in a state of peacefulness about really stressful situations. You say, well, God's in charge, so it feels a little bit like you're linked into some source that's going to help you find an aspect of peacefulness in the midst of something that isn't very peaceful. And whether that's based in reality or not doesn't matter, because it's what you're able to create. And this experience of being in the first cave of inner peace is that, I can create an inner peaceful experience relatively easily. So I'm in the moment of stress and tension. You say, you know what, I'm just going to do gratification exercise. I'm grateful for this, grateful for that, grateful for so forth and so on. So you just go into that. What we would see is if we had you hooked up to all my measurements of galvanic skin response and EKG and EEG of your brain,
I'd like to do that.
I'd be glad to do that with you. Shift into your delta and your theta, or if you're in beta, you'll shift to alpha. That we would see a shift. We would see your heart begin to regulate, and the space between your heart rates would become more consistent. We would see your skin. If we could measure your hormones, we'd see a different hormone coming out through your skin. We would see your skin likely being either less or more sweaty, depending on whether or not for you, when you're peaceful, you're warm, or when you're peaceful, you're cold. And that actually depends on the person as well. So, but we would see a shift. And it would be just a simple gratification practice where you actually create it, and you create it simply. And that's where the Zen zones come in. Zen zone meditations, I offer it on my YouTube channel. It's on abusetraumarecovery.com. It's a plethora of resources for people. We all get traumatized. It's just a part of life. We don't all get abused, but a large portion of the population does. So, abusetraumarecovery.com, the 6th course is all about inner peace. And so in there, you'll see 12 different meditations that are 5-minute long that just allow you to shift into creating an actual Zen zone moment for yourself. And that's the first layer of the cave. So I want to give you the metaphor of the cave. I also want to give you the metaphor of the castle. So let me do the metaphor of the castle and the cave at the same time. Just think of that you're an owner of a big castle. It's a beautiful castle. But guess what? You're on the outside of the castle. The drawbridge is up. The moat is full of crocodiles and alligators. And you're on the outside of it. Right? Now, what you discover, though, is that you're on the outside of this inner peaceful castle. But nonetheless, the goats and the cows are grazing, the grass is green, the sky is blue, the flowers are there. And that's that first level of just catching those serendipitous, peaceful things. All you have to do is just be available to receive and to absorb. That's it. You don't create it. Okay, but now let's just say, I want to go into that castle. It's mine, after all. You begin to find out, all I need to do is just ask them, can you put down the drawbridge, please? I'd like to go into my castle. And down it comes. And it's just that asking that moves you into that first level of the cave. I'd like to go into my inner peaceful castle. And so it's just a realization that that's available to you, but you do have to summons it. You have to request it. You have to know that you're going to walk into an experience of inner peace, and you're going to do it deliberately and consciously with whatever tools you decide work for you. Now, my book, Inner Peaceful Living, and I'll slide over to there for a moment, Own Your Own Peace, KISS Method for Inner Peaceful Living, or the free version you can get off of abusetraumarecovery.com, which is what you've read. this book has 300 different tools, and you're not going to use all 300, but you're going to try to find 3 to 5 tools that work for you that you can consciously use, so that once you're inside the castle, because you've asked to go inside, you can say, okay, now I'm going to use meditation, gratification practice, jogging in place, and laughing at silly jokes.
And yeah.
And
those
so
are really useful.
Yeah, but you do it deliberately. You do it deliberately. That's that first cave of the cave metaphor, but that's you walking in and saying, okay, we are doing inner peace. We're doing it easily. That is that first level. And that helps you. This is the Zen zone. That helps you know, okay, I'm now in charge of creating the hormones, the breathing, the heart rate, the galvanic sweats, the brain waves that are all related to a level of peaceful living. To be in control of that, to know you're in charge of that, is incredibly important, because now you have more empowerment. And you'll notice down here, the word empowerment, part of inner peaceful living is knowing that you have the power to create some amount of peacefulness. So when we talk about the mental and the imaginative, and we mentioned Viktor Frankl in the middle of Auschwitz, horrific, unimaginable things happening minute by minute, he said, you cannot take my mind. And what he basically did is he created what I was mentioning in the podcast, a dissociative state, where he would escape into his brain. I'd like to say that that's you escaping into your inner peaceful castle. And he dissociated or disconnected from the horrors that were going on. Now, he may have done it by remembering a wonderful meal that he had with his family, and how much he loved and adored his wife and his children, who were now by now gassed and dead. You know, and, right? So he remembers these wonderful moments, and that provides him in his imagination, provides him an opportunity to feel empowered over his own mind, mental ability to direct his thoughts and direct his whole body into that space. And that's the empowerment of knowing I can create inner peace. What I find is that people that don't exercise this sanctuary, don't walk into the castle, don't go into that first layer of the cave, they live saying, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And they live that mantra. I can't do it. I can't do it until this. I can't do it until that. I need that person to be this way. I need that person to do that. I need this situation to change. And there's so much into the disappointments, dissatisfaction, frustrations, angst, upsetness. They're so into all of those sorts of things that they're not in control of. And they feel like all those things need to change in order for them to feel something. But you begin to only live in that space, and there's never going to be a perfect state externally to you. Right. Be close to it, but you can always pay attention to travesty and horrors and memories and things that are wrong, always. But if you realize, yeah, that's going on, but right now I'm going to empower myself to experience my inner peace. It doesn't have to be outer peace, my inner peace. Now I am a different person. I'm living internally, internal locus of control. I've dissociated from that which I can't control or change in this moment. And I've connected to those things that are about my imagination. Imagination is incredibly important. Again, I'm referring to our podcast. Not a single thing around us that's been man-made that hasn't been imagined first. Not a single thing.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And you knew that before I even said it. You knew it, but now I've just made it conscious. So everything you imagine has the potential of being created. And if it's only created in terms of your physiology, that's actually really profound. And since we know that what you imagine does instantaneously change brain waves, heart, sweat, hormones, organ function, harmony, instantaneously, your body goes, oh, good, man, I like this moment. And if you show up for letting yourself like that moment, then now you've arrived at what you've just created for yourself. Now dwell there, actually dwell there. So the next step in all of this is you begin to say, you know what, this is my castle. I think I'm going to move in.
Love it. Yeah.
I'm going to dwell
in the castle.
Yeah. So you have that beautiful grand bring my grand piano. We're going to put it over there, in the background there. Bring my television set if that's a source of peacefulness. Bring my kitchenware. For me, bring my art equipment and my book writing stuff. And bring it in. We're going to populate this here. Now, in the castle, you can populate it with people you love that are peaceful as well. You can do that. But remember, this is in your imagination. So you bring the portions of the people in your life that in your imagination are good. Now, notice I said you bring the portions of the people because we're not all living in peacefulness all the time. So we bring that portion of, this is your imagination. So you bring the times when you can be hugged and kissed and warmed and comforted by a connection with someone, and you can remember those things. So you move into the castle of inner peace and you say, I don't always live here because I go out there and I take care of XYZ outside my castle, but this is my home. I'm going to live in inner peace. And inner peace you have to decide though, I'm going to dwell here. Now, some way, again, people dwell in it is by way of faith. Like you mentioned, Buddhism. Buddhism's all about being able to come to terms, not all about, please, it's so much broader than that statement, erase. Part of it is about how do we navigate pain and discomfort and travesty. And so it's like, it is about how do we have a mindset about those things that are outside the castle in this metaphor, and still maintain some sense of presence that has that equanimity, that has that gentleness, that has that peacefulness about it. But the Buddhist practice is all about being able to harness this inner peaceful castle. Parts of Christianity, parts of all of them have this inner peaceful castle component to it.
Really interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that it was so. I mean, it makes sense that all the great religions would cover this topic and as well. And it's comforting to know that you can kind of create your own peaceful sanctuary and home, and so that nothing can disturb it, right? And create it with intention and imagination and live from your power. That's what you were saying in your book that really stood out to me, that you want to. Being powerful is when you feel powerless, you're not kind of, I forget how you said it, but you're not kind of grabbing onto your power. You're not utilizing the power that you have, and you can utilize. We all have kind of a locus of empowerment that we're all powerful, and we can use, whether it's imagination or creativity or intention, to build or create whatever we want, especially in our own minds and hearts. And Carol, I'm just going to pull my light up a little more, so hopefully I'm a little not so much in the dark.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll be right back in like a second.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and keep talking, because what you see right here is, it's a book called Spiritual Gurus, Spiritual Paths, Your Choice. Another more modern version of it is Spiritual Paths for Your Successful Living. Let's see if I can get that on my camera. Oh, I don't know if I can. Oh, it's not showing up. Oh, well, it's another. There we go. That's the book. This is another more Spiritual Paths, Your Choice. This is a more secular version of it. It talks about 14 to 16 different paths that are oriented toward having kind of a spiritual connection with yourself. And it doesn't even mean that you have to believe in a God or a doctrine or a dogma. It can be any wide variety of things, but it's really nice to appreciate what all of those formulaic and well-written, authored religions really do. I think in the purest form, they do attempt to address our soul in the best of ways. It's the variations of the things that create strife and conflict, and I'm better than you, or I'm right and you're wrong kind of things. Not walking into that part of all the religious things, as much as that there is that wish that they would lead you into something more profound. And in being more profound, you find things such as are on this third level of inner peace. And so this third level of inner peace moves you into the second, third, and fourth placement of the cave. because you begin to be even more deliberate, more conscious, more in charge. In terms of the metaphor of the castle, you may have moved your furniture into the bottom floor, but there are hundreds of rooms in here. Let's go explore and let's find out what's there.
Yeah.
And then in some of those rooms, there's magic and there's purity, or there's outstanding sorts of amazing things that are like, wow, moments. And it's at that higher level where I talk about having an ascendant or transcendent set of experiences that make you begin to realize that even though we're human, we are probably also superhuman, but very uncultivatedly so. We are suppressed by our belief system, suppressed by conformity, suppressed by limited thinking, into not really accessing things that are really amazing about who we are and how we're connected to so much more that is beyond us. So I just use the imagination as we go into all those really high rooms in the castle, and from that we can see the perspective of the entire field around the castle. We can see everything in the castle. We can experience this elevated sense of whatever is going on, and that is historically where the rulers would spend most of their time, because it was safest, for one. The enemies couldn't get there quite so easily, but they really did have perspective. And they also had a lot of servants bringing things up to the top floors so that it wasn't so difficult. But it's, where's my elevation? Where's my reverie? Where's my awe? Where's my whoa? Where's my superpower? Where is my rising above this closed mindset? So you can find peacefulness in the closed mindset of your everyday existence, and that's the first two levels. You can find it, you can see it, spot it, you can create it. And if that's all you're into, that's fine. But on these higher levels, there's something more even profound. And what we discover is that once people have really experienced those higher levels, and I'll give you some examples, the rest of their life doesn't take on trauma in the same way.
Okay, right. We were going to talk about that. Yeah.
It doesn't wear it. Yeah, it doesn't wear it in the same way. So let me give you an example. Near-death experiences now are just talked about all the time. When I first wrote these books, it was not that well documented. Now, millions and millions and millions and millions of cases have been documented with hospital equipment attached and with observations of the dead person of things that actually went on. I mean, it's just been documented over and over and over again. When a person has gone through a near-death experience, they have died, their body has died, they separate from their body. There's that dissociation experience. They separate from their body and they begin to have some really transcendent experiences. Hearing conversations, going to different people they've loved, not feeling the pain of their body, but seeing the ambulances around them, and then maybe going toward the light, visiting relatives that have died, animals, pets that have existed in their life, and visiting those. And they go even higher and higher. I mean, they go all sorts of different places. The key that I want to say is that when they come back into their body, that's really the contrast between utter love and peace and the tension of a body that's been damaged in some way. And usually having to live with the pain of moving it back into their body and the pain of losing connection with that same love and that same peace is really complicated for them. But once they have got that integrated, they begin to say everything else that would once cause me stress or tension just isn't that relevant, because I now have perspective. I now am at peace with the idea of dying because I know there's something beyond. I now know that there is this experience of profound love, and that profound love is so much more important than XYZ. They tend to be able to take the issues that they think are so important, body issues, self-hatred, horrible experiences like rape, molestation, robbery, I mean, terrorism, war, horrible, 100% horrible situations, and they can put it into a different context. The whole that they are, that they begin to experience themselves both in the present, outside the castle.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of yucky stuff is going on, but also in those top levels of the castle where they can see it from a perspective. So there is that capacity to rise above. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you need to die to do this. For example, past life regressions that were done by Heather Rivera Friedman, a book about past life regressions, did a research where she took people through, I think it was 4 to 6 past life regression experiences
Mm-hmm.
that would cause them to be less depressed,
Mm-hmm.
less fearful, and more at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because they had elevated experiences that gave them perspective of what the issues, the teaching opportunities were of this particular lifetime. They had elevated experiences where they could put into context that would allow them to navigate the realities of this current life, but in a way that didn't create the attachment of all that ugly, awful stuff. Kind of like it would Teflon them against some of the stuff. They would feel it, but it's like put into a different perspective.
Right.
Now, there's so many ways of having these elevated experiences. And in the book that you contributed to, Your Soaring Phoenix,
Mm-hmm. I love that book.
Your chapter 41. I love your part of it. Because I looked it up during the break. It is about 42 different skills, tools that people can use that help them elevate themselves. There's soul journeys in there. So that would be related to shamanic soul journey, meditations, out-of-body experiences, astral projection, et cetera, that allow them to elevate themselves. And once a person's kind of elevated themselves, not in a narcissistic way, I don't mean that, but elevated themselves into a different level of consciousness, their sense of peace is actually more like reverie.
Okay.
You're like, wow. Oh. It's like a spiritual orgasm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's true. I resonate with so much of this, and when I think so from a psychology perspective, it's about when we study younger kids, they're learning about perspective and like taking the perspective of someone else. And with consciousness, the more perspective you have, the more you can understand and see the bigger picture. And then when you can experience something greater than yourself as well, whether that's a different perspective or let's say a spiritual experience that gives you an even greater perspective and even a sense of awe. And I love how that can really help you cultivate even a greater sense of lasting peace. And it reminds me of lately I've been, even though now it's starting to rain again here in Oregon, but I had been commuting for work for several years. And so I had stopped walking outside in the forest. And when I started doing it again this summer, or late summer, early fall, I was like, oh, that's right. That's why I do this, is because for me, that gives me a sense of peace, connection, awe, and it's critical to my well-being. Without it, regardless of whatever else is going on. Now, I also do yoga, and I would love to, Kara, I would love to talk about even also basic things. We were talking about this on the podcast. It's kind of like some basic things that people can do for anyone who, I'll share the link for the podcast too on our page here so that people can listen to that as well. But for anyone who's wondering, maybe what are some basic things I can do? I mean, you were talking about how you want to make sure you're sleeping well and eating well. And here you go. Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, well, and your book, Edie, do you have a copy of your book with you?
Because I do. And what I love about StreamYard is that, I don't know if my light's not very good here, but
hold it up to your chest. There, you hold it up right next to you. There we go. There's the title of it. What's the title of it, Edie?
The Memory of Health. And it might be easier to see closer up. But
depends on your camera. Memory of Health. There you go. That's beautiful. What
a gorgeous... What that's what's great about StreamYard is that it's not backwards.
Oh, yeah. Well, so that book is incredibly empowering because it gives you so many ways to improve your body, and your body is the house. Every cell in my body and my mind is a spiritual entity, and every cell in my body can have an experience of peacefulness that's manifested in whatever way. I really see us all very connected. So these are the different ways, but that's physical health. So that would be this domain up here. And then there's psychological and neurological and styles of thinking and doing related. So this, who are you? Well, you're a complex person. And these are a way of mapping out in 8 different categories, different complexities of who you are. So then how do you address that? And so, let me see. I will go to.
And thank you, Carol, for your comments, by the way. That was super nice. And yeah, wow, these are amazing slides.
Well, these are in the bigger book, right? And I'm not finding the slide I'm wanting. Oh, where'd you go? Maybe I didn't include it. Maybe that's there we go. I didn't include it, but this kind of gives you a feeling of, if I want inner peace, maybe I can take one of these things and actually modify it. And that may give me a shift into more experiences of an inner peace. One of the things that are related to is the style of thinking, doing, being, learning, and time management over here. And we find that not having things decided, resolved, and finished are the opposite of peacefulness. So decided, resolved, and finished. And so one of the big sections of the book, Own Your Peace, is about being able to figure out how to resolve something that's not solved, how to finish something that's not completed, and how to make a decision that's hassling you. And I go through all of those because this is like the second cave out of the 5 experiences. The second cave is, do I have things that I need to fix, finish, decide, get done that are kind of disturbing me? So for me,
that makes sense.
If my kitchen isn't clean, even though I don't like cleaning, if my kitchen isn't clean, it is a state of not feeling okay. So I go clean it. It is done. It's resolved. It's done. It's completed, and I can go on with things. I have frozen here. I don't know. Did you freeze as well?
You should come back, Carol. You popped back on. You will come back on again, I think. I can still hear you. I can still hear you.
So, so there we go. So that is a very important part of the pragmatics of that mid-level layering. So it's like on that first floor of the castle, that's where you have to eat and to clean and defecate. And, it's that first level of castles where you're going to live. It's on the higher levels where you're in that sublime, easy state where you're being taken care of kind of idea. So you do want to have a recognition that, if I get that done, if I get up off the couch and I'm going to count myself, I'm going to do the Mel Robbins approach. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stand up, go to the kitchen and wash dishes. and you'd go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up, go. It's like, get going, do it now. Don't hesitate. You'll actually find yourself in the process of exhilarating yourself to just going and getting it done. That you'll be peaceful during and after. And so that's a way of capturing it on a very pragmatic level. So you mentioned about those mid levels. It's like knowing we do live in this world and we do need to get things done and we do need to fix things and make decisions about things. When an infant is crying, the infant is in a state of need. We don't know what the need is necessarily, although now we have a better understanding of the language of an infant, which I would recommend people learning. But they're in a state of need and they're not in a state of peacefulness. And so the thing is that's their way of saying, okay, mid-level cave, I'm not peaceful. Something needs to be resolved, completed, decided, enacted, so that my physical or psychological well-being can be addressed. When you're raising a child, I really do not believe in the cry it to sleep approach. I don't believe in letting them cry till they stop, because that actually teaches their brain to go into a state of despair and retreat and passiveness. And it doesn't allow them to be empowered by their voice. I cry. I get something that helps me. Awesome. if what helps me matches what I was crying about, I'm cold. Oh, good. I get a blanket. I feel much better. If it matches what I'm crying about, I'm empowered. And I know that my voice empowers creating what I need. And that's what we really want to give our children, is that sense of your voice matches what you need. And we don't want to create spoiledness either. That's the secondary gain of all that, but that's a whole nother podcast.
No, that makes a lot of sense, that you want to empower kids to feel a sense of completion with whatever it is that they're experiencing. Especially since the nighttime is when you're processing stuff, right? Like in your dreams. And if something is, I mean, it happens to all of us. If it's left unprocessed during the day, then it may, I would assume, kind of continue until it's resolved. So it makes sense to resolve it. And it also makes sense to, it's a good reminder for all of us, right? Like in terms of self-care, that could lead to peace, right? Like if you're feeling antsy, or like, I mean, so many of us, for instance, we sit too much and we're very stressed, right? Like I'm realizing this more and more, that chronic stress is the new norm, and it's unacceptable. And I'm going to be addressing that more. But what can you do? How can you take some moments out to get up? You know, if you have a desk job, or if you're feeling stressed, give yourself a few moments to walk around and decompress and take some deep breaths, and just hopefully that will give you a little bit more of even a sense of peace in your body, and hopefully mind. But go ahead, Carol.
Can I teach you the 3 S's? And I developed this when I was working with healthcare workers, because they needed something that they could do in 30 seconds that would give them a recharge and a reboot. And so I called it the 3 S's. Let's see if I can remember all 3 S's. The first of the 3 S's is to sigh. The second of the 3 S's is to shake. Shake. And the third of 3 S's is, I don't remember. I think it might have been silly. Or something silly.
But that would make sense. Yeah.
So what you do in the first part is you allow yourself to actually sigh. This is like a deep breathing process. It's akin to all that deep breathing. It's oxygenating. And we do this automatically anyway. So you go, now we're doing it deliberately and consciously. We do it deliberately and consciously, as opposed to just it happening. Now it's our tool. So
yeah. That's a good one.
Another way I teach deep breathing at this first one of the 3 S's is what I call the panting into deep breathing, because anxiety is not always addressed by deep breathing. In fact, sometimes deep breathing doesn't provide the type of oxygen you need for your body to stir what it needs to get over a panic attack. So what you start off with, you match your heart. If your heart's beating fast, you match the emergency, the need for a lot of oxygen. You may not be in an emergency, but a panic attack feels like an emergency. And a panic attack is definitely opposite of inner peace. So this is my approach. And you stick out your tongue and you open your mouth and open your throat, and you pant for about 10 times, and then you slow it down. And I'm just going to illustrate how you do it. You go, a little lightheaded. You've actually supplied yourself a great deal of fast oxygen. Wow. You've shifted from breathing like you're scared, which is totally fine to match. And then you find yourself no longer wanting to breathe that much because you feel a little lightheaded. So you slow down automatically, and that integrates that sense of sighing into it. So that's one of the first S's. The second S is to shake. And so dogs do this. My lovely little dog that lived for 23 years, can you believe it? She was attacked twice, bit, bloody by coyotes. Survived them both. Amazing. Miracle, right? But what we know about animals is after something that scared them, or when they get wet, they shake. They
Right.
just shake all over. So go ahead and shake. Just shake, 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 shake. Well, you know what's interesting is if you shake all over, this is similar to one of the exercises you start off with Qigong, where they tell you just to
that's right.
shake all over, right?
Off that excess energy. Yeah,
So,
or that fear.
so this is one of the 3 S's, right? So sigh, shake, and then silliness. And just kind of like when you're shaking and you oh my gosh, I look so silly. Yeah, of course I look silly. They're supposed to be silly. And you begin to laugh at yourself. Oh my gosh, it's so silly. And you're embarrassed in a positive sort of way. And that ability to just be embarrassed in a positive sort of way is not about shame. It's about, oh, that was so silly. Yeah, I could be silly. And so now you begin to shed the energies of judgment and trying to be perfect and trying to put on the right mask so people don't know that you're scared or upset or angry. You know, you're vulnerable to yourself when you have a laugh about your own embarrassment. Oh, that was silly. That's a peaceful kind of vulnerability to have in a relationship with yourself. I love that. So that would be the 3 S's that are related. And isn't that easy, right? So this is like a Zen zone moment that I created for healthcare workers because they could go do this in 30 seconds. It would re-energize them, and we could test and see that all their biological systems shifted.
Oh, those are wonderful tools, and I love how you mentioned, what was it? Peaceful vulnerability. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's that acceptance. It's that being vulnerable with yourself and laughing about it. Like, think about right now, you're not going to tell anybody. And I'm doing that so you don't feel self-conscious. We're not going to shame you.
Okay.
Think about the most embarrassing, silly thing that happened to you. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Ever?
Yeah, right. I can't believe I did it. Don't tell us. Don't tell us. Keep it to yourself and notice that you're giggling.
I have to think. I've had a few, I'm sure.
Well, I've had some, and I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to own it. But it's just like that ability, the freedom to giggle about it, sheds your skin of self-judgment and perfectionism. And I need to cover this up, and I need to hide this from others. It's so worthy of rejecting, and shifts it over to this vulnerable self-acceptance. And
love that. I love that, Carol.
So being able to be vulnerable is about I'm accepting myself enough to be vulnerable. You can do whatever you want with it right now because I accept me in my vulnerable state. So for a moment ago, I stuck out my tongue. Oh, come on, who does that? It's embarrassing.
Well, they do it in yoga, and even the sighing on purpose we'll do in yoga to activate your vagus nerve. And it's good to, and when you accept yourself, isn't that, I mean, I want to ask you a couple of the questions that we didn't get to on our live stream, a blog, and let me know when you need to wrap up too, Carol. But when you can, I would assume that when you accept yourself, wouldn't that be a huge part of finding that inner peace?
Yeah.
Isn't that what a lot of people, if you're struggling with self-loathing or what we were talking about, kind of, let me pull up your, I have to find my questions here. But the two questions we didn't get to were, well, first of all, if you've been through trauma or you're in a victim pattern, how could one recognize such a cycle or trap and then shift into more layers or levels of peace? And then maybe like, what's a tool they could use? I mean, I don't know if accepting yourself is related to that, but maybe the next question after is.
Yeah, well, oh, wow, these are such complex questions. Sorry about laying those on you.
No, they're good questions, though.
Yeah, self-acceptance is a beautiful thing, and it doesn't mean that you accept. Here's the way I describe it to myself. When I'm painting, painting is such a learning curve, and I talk about learning curve in my book. It's such an awkward. It's so awkward because you feel so stupid. You feel so inept. You feel so uninformed. You feel like, oh, I know nothing. I can do nothing. Everything's awful. there's another thing, they call it the ugly point in the painting. Every painting goes through what's called an ugly spot. It does.
That's funny.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's ugly and you really know there's no way to turn it around, or you just don't have the skills to turn it around. Or other times you keep going, you go, okay, there it goes. Oh, there it goes. Oh, it's turning around. There it is.
Turning the corner.
Everything in life has that ugly point, and that ugly point may be at the beginning, maybe in the middle, maybe in a number of places. That ugly point, or that I don't like this point, is as important to embrace as the success, because it's all about the creativity and about the realization that as human beings, we're limited. As human beings, we don't know, we make mistakes. You know, Bob Ross, the artist, would always say, happy mistake, convert the happy mistake into something pretty, and here's how you do it. And here's how you do it. So you want to have that self-acceptance around the learning process. The learning process is about being stressed and tense, about not knowing how to do it, and feeling yucky about that, or feeling inept about it, but noticing that you have persistence and tenacity and stick it with it, try to learn how to do it, and then you get caught up and, oh, I'm learning. This learning feels really good. Learning is the process of not knowing, feeling awkward about it, maybe embarrassed about it, but continuing to press forward. And learning is about the pressing forward until you shift into various levels of mastery. And one reason I enjoy painting is that any technique I learn, I go through that entire struggle. But within mind, I think I might master this one year. Let's just keep going.
Oh my goodness, you're an amazing painter. So I think you may have already mastered it, but
no. Oh no, you should have seen what I created this week. That's just unbelievable. Anyway, so it's like that's what you want to notice about life, and I think that's why when people have past life regressions or near-death experiences or whatever, they begin to realize that life is all about the learning process, and the learning process is not about being perfect. It's about being in the process of learning. And you are going to, I know people don't like this word stupid, but I actually value it. It's like, oh, I'm so stupid right now. Does not feel like I'm being mean to me. It feels like I'm embracing that I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm ignorant, and I'm uninformed, and I'm unpracticed, and I'm in that stage.
But it's also like, oh, go ahead. And it's also like that beautiful creative place.
It's not beautiful. It's as ugly as it can be.
Well, I just want to say, Carol, that when I'm trying to teach myself to sing while I'm watching, and I don't consider myself a good singer, but I'm going to take what you're talking about, like just embrace all the mistakes and and just kind of let it be what it is, imperfect, because that's how you said you learn. And I like the beautiful mess of not knowing what I'm doing with singing, but because I feel like there's something in there that wants to come out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and I was in an art class and someone said, I just don't want to get, this is watercolor, I just don't want to get the paper too wet. and I was thinking to myself, well, if I get the paper too wet and this is a horrible painting because I did that, I'm going to take that piece of paper and throw it away and let it be a learning experience. And so to be afraid of getting the paper too wet is restrictive.
Yeah, exactly.
You pretend that you can aim toward perfection, and that's just a lie. And to aim toward perfection is a lie that causes a lot of stress and tension, that doesn't allow you to go through the various phases of learning. So it's all akin to that acceptance of your vulnerability. It's acceptance of imperfection. It's embracing it. It's like, come with me. Let's go do this stupid, ugly, horrible mistake. Let's get into it. Let's muddle into it. Let's learn what we can. And it's embracing it, not like a slap in the face or judgment, but as this is part of the first step. And then there's peacefulness and actually being really silly and ridiculous and shaking your head and going, oh, I don't believe it. And there's that third of the three S's is being silly with yourself.
No, it's kind of being self-deprecating, and it makes it easier to whatever it is. And does this help even if someone does, let's say, have a victim identity, or if they've been through trauma, would some of these suggestions help them as well for kind of experiencing hopefully more inner peace? And I wish my lighting, sorry, Carol, usually my lighting is better. I don't know what happened to it. I've got all these lights on, and we're in we have almost no light here today in the Pacific Northwest. That might be part of the issue, but anyway, would that help somebody that has been through trauma, or is it just the self-acceptance?
Well, this is a good example. You have to have self-acceptance of your lighting. So instead of saying, I'm sorry about the lighting, you say, I'm trying to give everybody a very peaceful lighting. So I have very dim lighting today. Ambiance. That's right, exactly. And that is embracing what is and finding a moment of acceptance in it. In terms of victims, when we get ourselves into victim mentality, if we're no longer in a trauma and abusive situation, but we're still looking for how we're a victim of this, that, and the other, we truly are empowering everything that's external to us and disempowering everything internal to us.
Okay.
So we don't have any power. It's everybody else has it, and everybody's awful, and everybody's victimizing me. So it's not, you're not in your castle.
Yeah.
You've stepped into the moat and go, oh gosh, you put these crocodiles and alligators there. And everybody else is saying, get out of the moat, just get out of there. And you're saying, oh no, who did this? Oh, they're eating me, it hurts so much. And yeah, it does. There are crocodiles and alligators. They do exist. Get yourself out of that crocodile and alligator. Get yourself up the bank and over to someplace around your castle or inside your castle. But it is a mindset, because it's also an addiction. People who move into that victim, it's a self-perpetuated record that goes into the same groove over and over again. It's self-perpetuated. It's kind of an obsessive thinking process. So you have to intervene. Every time you feel yourself doing it, the first thing is to recognize, oh, there it is again, doing it again. What happens is that people are so connected to their being victimized. We're all victimized. Every day long, we're victimized. That's just a reality. But they're so connected to their identity as
they're identifying with it,
that they can't step out to a moment when they're not the victim, but they're actually empowered. It's like, so we could all in an instant say, what's inflicting you today? And we'd come up with it. Who's inflicting something on you? And we'd come up with something, because it's always there. So it's not like you're saying it has to go away. It says, but which one am I going to pay attention to? But in order to pay attention to a non-victim situation, you have to actually wake up to realizing, oh my gosh, I'm victimizing myself by connecting to all these victim moments. And that's a hard thing to alert yourself to, because it's a different mindset. So that's like step number one. That's like the walking toward the cave kind of thing. It's like, okay, I don't have to have this mindset. Oh, here it is again. Oh, here it is again. Oh, here it is again. And the next one is walking inside the cave and saying, okay, opposite of my victim mentality, I'd like to have a peaceful mentality. And I'm going to therefore create a peaceful mentality. Oh, I'm no longer a victim. I'm now a creator. And I'm a creator of something good. And that's that first cave. That's saying to the hey, pull the drawbridge down. I want to go into my castle.
It's active. It's empowered.
Yeah,
I love that. And yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. And then there's so many things we could talk about, but I wanted to ask you the last question on here, and then I wanted to ask you one more about physical, like world peace. I know that, and if you don't want to, I know that there's a lot going on right now, but I was just, if you're comfortable, I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are on that. But it's I'll leave that up to you if you want to go deeper into that.
Sure.
But first, the last question is, I think this might be related to kind of what we were talking about, but how does a negative self-identity related to dissatisfaction with self or self-loathing or patterns that are cruel to oneself even, or a disease-based identity, how can they shift into inner peace that is related to self-love, self-compassion, patterns of kindness and creativity, and expansive living that is vigorous? Now, I know we've covered some of this, but is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Always, unfortunately, always. So, and again, in my book, there, own your peace. It really does delineate even more things that you can do. When it comes to someone, the act of kindness is a very, very powerful. We know that when a person who's been victimized and abused does an act of kindness, they actually alter their moment of feeling like a victim, and they also actually they alter their own empowerment of being able to do something good and worthwhile. And this is one reason why the abusee often will be kind to the abuser. It seems so weird, and it is disempowering on some level, but it's also empowering because the person remembers they can do an act of kindness. And that is, it's like self-expression. I can do an act of kindness. Viktor Frankl did an act of kindness towards some of the Nazi soldiers, for example.
Wow.
So it's like acts of kindness are very, very powerful. And they also move people out of a moment of depression into a moment of, I can actually make something meaningful happen for someone else. And I get that inner peace. I get that sense of liking myself. I get that sense of connection. I get that sense of I can create something positive, and then I can, in an empathic sort of like infectious way, see someone else being grateful to me, and he's helpful. So you give $5 to someone that has nothing, or you give a sandwich to someone outside of 7-Eleven that has nothing. For a moment, they're grateful. For a moment, you're glad you could give it. And for a moment, you've had this infectious, empathic, mirroring experience that's shifted you into not being a victim, shifted you into being a giver, not a victim, not victimizing anybody, and shifted your own identity. And if you do an accumulation of a lot of acts of kindness, and there is a downside to all of this stuff too, but then you can actually create something in opposition. So maybe we can transfer this over to world peace. One thing about disasters or world peace is that we also get to see two things. We get to see people going in there trying to help and rescue.
Right.
And fortunately, we hear some stories about that. With Ukraine, for example, we sponsored a young man that would have been killed by now. And we sponsored him to come to the United States. I just had he and 2 other Ukrainian friends over to lunch on Monday. And to hear their stories was and what they've done with their lives and how productive and constructive they are and how smart they are, that these 3 young men would have been dead because they would have been killed. Most likely they would have been killed in Ukraine. So it's like I was able to do that. And if Ukraine hadn't been attacked, I would have never thought of Ukraine, and I would have never thought of what can I do. But I was compelled to try to do something. So when there's devastations, if it urges you to do something that is positive and constructive, that's you empowering yourself in the middle of other things. Another aspect about world peace is leaders of countries are notoriously smart about manipulating people into states of fear, unrest, and dissatisfaction. And since those parts of us are so easily triggered and so easily accessed because of our DNA, we are geared toward negative. That's our DNA, because that's about survival. So they can get us into fear and dissatisfaction and unrest, and they can harness it toward wanting to fight the enemy. Then they have got their troops and their soldiers, so forth and so on, to do their bidding. The world leaders are incredibly cunning along these lines. Why do they want to start a fight? Why do the leaders of this want to start the fight? Well, they have their own campaign. They have their own issues. They have their own want for power and greed and fame, and maybe they're trying to stand up for what they think is a mass victimization. They have their own reasons for it. But if they never had any followers that were triggered by fear and dissatisfaction and unrest, they'd peter
Interesting.
out. They'd peter out.
That's a great point. Yeah, you have to have people that will do what you ask them to do, and that's a really interesting point. And I know it's so complicated when we're I think a lot of us feel so much empathy and compassion and just sadness for people that are going through so many terrible things that we see happening, and sometimes it can make you feel kind of helpless. But I love that we're talking about inner peace and kind of taking back your power that way, what you can do, because I think it really does make a difference when you can cultivate as much peace as you can, like peace of mind, inner peace, build that castle, and then even what you can do to connect with other people. And I'm going to be talking about hope a little bit in the future. And I was learning that hope, if you do something for someone else, it makes you feel more hopeful.
Right.
But I also didn't realize that it can also make you feel, more peaceful and more empowered. I mean, it makes sense that kind of, or less traumatized, right? Like when you can kind of, again, step outside of yourself, even if you're suffering. And it makes you remember that we're all connected. I think that's such a huge piece of the puzzle, is that connection that we all have with one another. And I was just saying this to someone in another interview, that I hope that we can find our way back to one another. I really hope for that. And I appreciate, all of your contributions.
Thank you.
To all of these, sometimes very challenging topics and issues. And, so, and we should do some more, Carol. This is,
thank you.
This was I love that you have your PowerPoint here, and thank you Starshine Dreams for joining us. And I know that there will be a lot of people watching the replays. And Carol, is there, first of all, if someone wanted to contact you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, the easiest is just my name, Dr. Carol Francis @gmail.com, drcarolfrancis.com. So DrCarolFrancis, so drcarolfrancis.com. And that website has a lot of courses and classes and information on it as well. But you can also see links to all the other websites there. And my phone number is there as well, 310-543-1824. But I do really suggest that people go check out abusetraumarecovery.com. Abusetraumarecovery.com has a plethora of free offers to you that you can share with others, do with others. Therapists use it with their clients. People use it in the privacy of their home and not telling anybody what they've gone through. They nonetheless start working a recovery program. And there's just so much there that it's kind of overwhelming. So sorry about that, but I'd rather overwhelm.
No, I think that's wonderful. I've obviously checked out your main website, but I'm gonna check out that one as well. And thank you for giving so many free resources for people. And of course, we didn't even get into, I don't know anything about medical hypnotherapy. I mean, there's so many ways that you help people, which is really amazing. Do you take people, are you still taking clients as well?
Oh yeah, I'm not retired yet, although I'm well at that age. I just love my work so much. And I love the experience of working with people. So yeah, I'm still taking people, and I'm in the beach cities of the South Bay. And nowadays I do a lot of online therapy sessions, which I have found to be quite dynamic. One of the gifts of COVID is that I learned the value of being able to work around the world with people without limits, without walls. It's been an interesting treasure.
I love that. That makes me so happy. See, we did get some good things out of COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, the whole Zoom thing has been great, and just in general just a few years ago, we couldn't even connect on video. I mean, it was more than a few years ago, but and so, Carol, is there anything else that you want to make sure that people know, or any other takeaways that you want for people to make sure that they have with them before we
Yeah.
part
Well,
ways?
what I've really tried to do is to make inner peace accessible by everybody at any given moment, and knowing that there are more complicated ways of getting into the third and fourth caves of life that are very deep and deepening, but they take a lot more commitment and a lot more presence and consciousness, so that you can go as deep into this, and you can go deeply into joy, you can go deeply into hope, you can go deeply into inner peace. And so how deep do you want to go? Do you need to go? Do you have time to go? It's up to you. So really the goal has been making inner peace accessible and easily something you can do in moments. And that's not the only set of tools that are there, but it's the ones I wanted to make sure I conveyed the most in this presentation.
Oh, and I think that's wonderful. And of course it's always wonderful to be able to go further, but at first we just want everybody just needs the basic steps, and that kind of starts to plant your feet, right? Or let those plants grow, like, of consciousness. And first you have to get the roots planted, right? And then you can expand. And so thank you very much. And
thank you for the opportunity. I really am glad. I was excited. I love talking about this, and thank you for letting me share.
I'm so glad we got to chat, Carol, and I thank you for hanging in there with our technical issues. And everybody. So so we have. Thank you for listening, everyone. And of course, there will be a replay. And then we also, I will try to remember to put in. We have a whole podcast on this as well. It's about half an hour, and we kind of go over about 5 or 6 questions in detail, so as well. So it's a little bit different than this. So I'll try to put that as well in this. And thank you again, Carol, for being here. And I will see you online and other ways. And I'm sure we'll be in touch. And
wonderful. And thanks for enjoying my art. That's always such a treat.
Oh, you have beautiful. Yeah, everybody go check out Carol's art. It's just incredible.
Well, thank you so much. Okay, you take care. We'll see you soon.
You.
Okay?
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for being here, Starshine Dreams. Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.